So Friday will be a spicy day for the economic data. But of course, it's the oil price right now that's moving everything. And let's get over to Nathan Dean about it of Bloomberg Intelligence, because every Friday he breaks down the key events in Washington, how policy is shaping industries and companies, and the catalyst investors need to watch. And Nathan, it seems like there's one major catalyst right now, one major event, one major piece of policy. Is the U.S. going to give us any kind, is the administration going to give us any kind of timeline for this war, or is that counter to good strategy?
So I don't think you're going to see anything in the words of a timeline. President Trump even just said this morning that, he would rate the military effort a 12 or 15 out of 10. But you are going to see Congress try and start debating this idea of a supplemental defense bill. Now, Bloomberg News reported that there's going to be about $50 billion that the Pentagon is asking for. And the reason why it's important for clients is because anytime you get something out there to the floor like a supplemental defense bill, everybody else is going to try and attach something to it. For example, we even heard that $15 billion worth of farmer aid could be attached to this. And if this thing begins to blow up, and we even see the White House come out and say, look, instead of $50 billion, we want $500 billion, then obviously this could be something that's going to be dramatically important for companies and sectors out here. But we just tell folks that, the smaller it is, the easier it is to get past. The bigger it is, it's going to fall bigger to political games, and it's going to struggle.
What are we seeing in terms of policy? I mean, affordability is a term that President Trump both, I guess, hates and also embraces, right? But the price at the pump is very important to him in terms of gasoline. The price of a barrel of oil is very important to him. And we're starting to see sanctions exceptions for Putin, for Moscow, to sell oil in places or to people that it was previously not allowed to. This lets Russia cash in on the Iran war. It helps them to fund what they're doing in Ukraine. But what else will we see the administration do to try and keep the price at the pump down?
So, you hit it right on the head. I mean, affordability is probably the number one issue going into the midterms. And, President Trump's focus right now is not on affordability. It's on this geopolitical situation in Iran. So other things that you're going to see the White House likely do is, there's ideas like opening up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve or cutting more regulatory red tape. There's going to be a lot of actions that folks over at Treasury and Commerce and Energy are looking at the moment to try and make sure that Americans see that those gas prices are coming down. Now, I think part of it depends on the strategy of Iran. If you see a short-term resolution to this, I hate to use the word transitory, but you would see, prices potentially come down before the American populace begins to think of it in context of the election. But if this situation continues and gas prices continue to remain high or go higher, then it's going to start getting into this idea of the election, and that you're going to see the White House try and take even more and more steps to try and get those gas prices down. But the problem is that, for a lot of things that our energy team will tell me, U.S. policy isn't so much the driver of gas prices, it's global policy, and President Trump only has limited options there.
Nathan, when does Congress have to weigh in on a war? I mean, to what extent does the executive have the power to wage a war without asking Congress? And is there a certain time when, Congress has to come in?
So Congress tried to come in this week. Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia actually sponsored a resolution in the Senate that would effectively have President Trump come back and say, well, you need congressional authorization in order to continue the conflict with Iran. I mean, the last time the United States declared war via Congress was back in 1941. Now, both the Senate resolution and the House resolution failed. And I think you're going to see a breather now from that side of trying to get Congress to get back on this game of being the ones that would declare war, for example. I think the next catalyst is if you begin to see the Republican uneasiness of a longer-term conflict, any type of escalation, say boots on the ground or anything. I mean, obviously, nobody's talking about that at this point. But if you get into a situation where this continues and Republicans, especially those that are exposed to the elections in terms of purple districts, begin a little bit more uneasiness with the war, you are going to see Congress try and come back here and say, we need to take a little bit more control of the situation. But for the last 80 years, presidents have had a lot of leeway to do conflicts, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
All right. At some point, we're going to start getting our tax refunds, and I think the Tax Foundation said those should be 10 to 15% higher than they were last year. That goodwill, though, I imagine gets eaten up by, again, the price at the pump of gasoline climbing to the highest level that it's been in either of President Trump's terms. What can the Republicans do in Congress to try and counter this? Because they've got to worry about the midterms as well. Or have they ceded all of their power to the White House?
So you are going to hear talk of another reconciliation bill. In fact, just this morning, Speaker Johnson was talking about another bite of the apple. Think One Big Beautiful Bill Part 2. Now, we're at a 20-30% chance that a bill can pass. Look, the Republicans only have a margin of 1 in the House of Representatives. And anytime you say, look, we're going to do this, more and more ideas get piled on. And next thing you know, it's a huge thing that's probably not going to pass. So legislatively, I don't think there's going to be all much there. But the thing that we're telling our clients is be careful of President Trump's bully pulpit. Think of just a statement last week when he said he wanted Susan Rice off the board of Netflix. President Trump really doesn't need Congress to do this. He just needs a Truth Social account. And so you're going to see the president take more and more to social media to try and get the bully pulpit to get companies to actually lower prices. And you're going to see more and more of that ahead of the midterm elections. But obviously with only certain ramifications, because some industries will say, yes, we'll actually do what you say. Some industries will say our hands are tied, and it's more the macroeconomic situation that's driving this.
All right, Nathan, thanks very much. Nathan Dean there of Bloomberg Intelligence. Coming up, a